Keanu Reeves disguises himself as a guest in his own hotel and ends up finding the love of his life. The sun-drenched coastline of Santa Barbara stretched out before the imposing silhouette of the Hotel Arcadia, its pristine white facade gleaming like a beacon against the azure sky. For decades, this architectural marvel had been a sanctuary for the rich and famous, a place where Hollywood royalty could escape the relentless gaze of the paparazzi. But for its owner, Keanu Reeves, it had become something far more significant, a stage for the most challenging role of his life. Keanu stood at the expansive window of his private suite, his dark eyes scanning the bustling activity on the beach below. His fingers absently traced the outline of a meticulously crafted prosthetic nose, the centerpiece of an elaborate disguise that would transform him from one of the most recognizable faces in the world into just another face in the crowd. "Are you sure about this, Mr. Reeves?" The voice belonged to Jasper, Keanu's longtime personal assistant and confidant. The older man's concern was evident in the furrow of his brow. Keanu turned, a wry smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Jasper, after all these years, I think you can call me Keanu, and yes, I'm sure I need this." Jasper sighed, shaking his head. "I understand your need for authenticity, but this seems extreme, even for you. What if someone recognizes you?" "That's the beauty of it," Keanu replied, his voice tinged with excitement and a hint of desperation. "They won't. Kevin Miller is about as far from Keanu Reeves as you can get." As he spoke, Keanu began the transformation. He carefully applied the prosthetic nose, subtly altering the shape of his face. Next came a pair of wire-rimmed glasses and a wig of thinning, mousy brown hair. The final touch was a set of removable veneers that slightly bucked his front teeth. Jasper watched in silent amazement as the movie star vanished before his eyes, replaced by an unremarkable middle-aged man who could easily fade into any crowd. "Remember," Keanu said, his voice now pitched slightly higher with a hint of a Midwestern accent. "For the next few weeks, I'm Kevin Miller, a humble insurance adjuster from Omaha, here for a much-needed vacation." Jasper nodded, still uneasy. "And what exactly do you hope to accomplish with this charade?" Keanu, now Kevin, paused, his eyes clouding with an emotion Jasper couldn't quite place. "I need to remember what it feels like to be normal, to connect with people without the weight of expectations, to fall in love with life again." The last words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken longing. Jasper's expression softened. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Kevin." With a final nod, Kevin Miller stepped out of the luxurious suite and into the hallway of the Hotel Arcadia, ready to embark on his clandestine adventure. The lobby of the Hotel Arcadia was a symphony of understated elegance. Marble floors gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers, while plush sofas and armchairs invited weary travelers to sink into their embraces. Kevin shuffled towards the reception desk, hunching his shoulders slightly to complete the illusion of an ordinary man overwhelmed by such grandeur. "Welcome to the Hotel Arcadia, sir." The receptionist greeted him with a practiced smile. "How may I assist you today?" Yes, I have a reservation," Kevin stammered, affecting a slight nervousness. "Under Miller, Kevin Miller." The receptionist's fingers danced across the keyboard. "Ah yes, Mr. Miller. We have you in one of our standard rooms for 2 weeks. Is this your first time staying with us?" Kevin nodded, allowing his eyes to wander around the lobby in feigned awe. "Yes, it's quite something. I've been saving up for this vacation for years." Something in his tone must have touched the receptionist, for her smile softened into something more genuine. "Well, Mr. Miller, we're delighted to have you with us. I hope your stay exceeds all your expectations." As she handed over the key card, Kevin felt a small thrill of success. His first interaction as Kevin Miller had gone perfectly. Now the real test would begin. The standard room was a far cry from the opulent suite he had just left, but Kevin found himself appreciating its simple comfort. He unpacked his modest suitcase, filled with off-the-rack clothes carefully chosen to complete his disguise. As the afternoon sun began to dip towards the horizon, Kevin decided to explore the hotel grounds. He made his way to the expansive pool area, where guests lounged on chaise lounges, sipping colorful cocktails and basking in the warm California sun. Finding an empty chair, Kevin settled in, pulling out a well-worn paperback, a far cry from the scripts he usually perused. He was so engrossed in maintaining his character that he almost missed the commotion several chairs down. "I'm so sorry, Ma'am. Let me get you some fresh towels right away." Kevin glanced up to see a young pool attendant frantically apologizing to an irate guest. The woman, dripping with water and righteous indignation, was berating the poor boy for accidentally splashing her with his cleaning cart. Before he could think better of it, Kevin found himself on his feet, approaching the scene. "Excuse me," he said, pitching his voice to be heard over the woman's tirade. "I couldn't help but overhear. It seems like an honest mistake. Perhaps we could all take a breath?" The woman whirled on him, her eyes flashing. "And who are you to interfere?" Kevin raised his hands in a placating gesture. "Just a fellow guest who hates to see anyone's day ruined over a little water. It's a beautiful afternoon. Why don't you let this young man fetch you a fresh drink, and we can all enjoy the sunshine?" For a moment it seemed the woman might explode again. But something in Kevin's gentle demeanor seemed to deflate her anger. With a huff, she nodded curtly. "Fine, a mojito, and make it a double." As the relieved pool attendant scurried off, Kevin offered the woman a sympathetic smile. Vacation can be stressful sometimes, can't it? All that pressure to relax. To his surprise, the woman let out a rueful laugh. "You have no idea. I'm sorry for making a scene. I'm Margot, by the way." "Kevin," he replied, extending his hand. "Nice to meet you, Margot." As they chatted, Kevin found himself marveling at the ease of the interaction. There was no undercurrent of recognition, no carefully guarded responses. It was simply two strangers connecting over shared experiences and the simple pleasure of a beautiful day. When Margot excused herself to return to her room, Kevin felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the California sun. This was why he had embarked on this crazy scheme, to rediscover the joy of genuine human connection. As the day faded into evening, Kevin made his way to the hotel's renowned restaurant, the Siren's Song. He requested a table for one, ignoring the fleeting pang of loneliness that accompanied the words. The maitre d' led him to a small table near the back, apologizing for not having a better location. "It's perfect," Kevin assured him, secretly thrilled to be seated in a spot that afforded him a view of the entire restaurant. He had just opened his menu when a flurry of activity near the kitchen caught his attention. A woman with dark hair pulled into an elegant chignon was speaking urgently to several staff members, her hands moving in graceful but insistent gestures. Even from a distance, Kevin could sense the authority she carried. This must be the event manager he had heard so much about, but had yet to meet in person. Sofia Alvarez had a reputation for turning even the most challenging situations into flawless events, and from the way the staff responded to her, it was clear why. As if sensing his gaze, Sofia suddenly looked up, her eyes meeting Kevin's across the crowded restaurant. For a moment, the world seemed to narrow to that single point of connection. Then, with a small shake of her head, Sofia turned back to her staff, the spell broken. Kevin found himself oddly breathless. In that brief moment, he had glimpsed something in Sofia's eyes, a depth of emotion, a hint of vulnerability, quickly masked by professional composure. It stirred something in him, a longing to know more about the woman behind that carefully constructed facade. His musings were interrupted by the arrival of his waiter. As he placed his order, Kevin made a mental note to find a way to cross paths with Sofia again. Little did he know that fate and the intricate workings of the Hotel Arcadia would bring them together sooner than he could have imagined. The next morning, Kevin awoke early, determined to make the most of his time as an ordinary guest. He made his way to the hotel gym, a state-of-the-art facility that he had personally overseen the design of, though he had never actually used it himself. As he stepped onto a treadmill, he noticed a familiar figure a few machines down. Sofia Alvarez was running at a steady pace, her face a mask of concentration. Kevin felt his heart rate increase, and not just from the exertion of his warm-up. Gathering his courage, he called out a cheerful, "Good morning." Sofia glanced over, her expression softening into a polite smile. "Good morning," she replied, her voice slightly breathless from her run. "I hope I'm not bothering you," Kevin continued, falling into an easy jog. "I just wanted to say how impressed I was with how you handled that situation in the restaurant. Last night. You must be the event manager I've heard so much about." Sophia's eyebrows rose slightly. "You noticed that? Most guests don't pay attention to the behind-the-scenes workings." Kevin shrugged, trying to appear casual. "I guess I'm naturally observant. I'm Kevin, by the way. Kevin Miller." "Sophia Alvarez," she replied, stepping off her treadmill and grabbing a towel. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Miller. I hope you're enjoying your stay with us." "Please call me Kevin," he insisted. "And yes, it's been wonderful so far. Though, I have to admit, I'm a bit overwhelmed by all the options. Any recommendations for must-do activities?" Sophia seemed to hesitate for a moment, as if weighing whether to engage further with a guest, but something in Kevin's earnest expression must have won her over. "Well, Kevin, if you're interested in really experiencing the best of Santa Barbara, I'd be happy to offer some suggestions." For the next few minutes, they chatted easily about local attractions and hidden gems. Kevin found himself captivated by Sophia's passion for the area and her obvious pride in the hotel. As their conversation drew to a close, he felt a reluctance to let her go. "Thank you so much for the advice," he said warmly. "I don't suppose you'd be interested in playing tour guide sometime, maybe over coffee?" The words were out before he could second-guess them. Sophia looked surprised, and for a moment, Kevin feared he had overstepped, but then a small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "That's very kind of you, Kevin, but I'm afraid my schedule is quite full with upcoming events," she replied. Was there a hint of regret in her tone, or was that just wishful thinking on his part? "Of course I understand," Kevin backpedaled smoothly. "Well, if you ever find yourself with a free moment, the offer stands. It would be nice to have a friend here." Sophia's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "I'll keep that in mind. Enjoy your stay, Kevin." As she walked away, Kevin felt a mixture of disappointment and hope. He hadn't imagined the connection between them, but it was clear that Sophia had walls up, walls he was determined to scale, even if he had to do it one carefully placed brick at a time. Over the next few days, Kevin threw himself into the role of the enthusiastic tourist. He took surfing lessons on the beach, marveling at the simple joy of being just another face in the crowd. He explored local art galleries and restaurants, savoring the ability to blend in and observe without the constant awareness of being watched himself. But through it all, his thoughts kept returning to Sophia. He caught glimpses of her around the hotel, always poised, always in control, but with that hint of something deeper lurking beneath the surface. Each brief interaction left him wanting more, wondering about the story behind those guarded eyes. It wasn't until nearly a week into his stay that chance, or perhaps fate, finally gave him the opening he had been hoping for. Kevin was returning from a hike in the nearby hills, pleasantly exhausted and looking forward to a quiet evening in his room, when he heard raised voices coming from one of the hotel's conference rooms. Curiosity piqued. He peered through the partially open door. Inside, he saw Sophia engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion with a man in an expensive suit. The man's face was flushed with anger, while Sophia maintained a calm exterior, though Kevin could see the tension in her shoulders. "I don't care about your policies," the man was saying, his voice dripping with condescension. "I paid for a premium experience, and I expect you to deliver it, no matter what it takes." "Mr. Hoffman," Sophia replied, her voice steady, but with an edge of steel. "I assure you we are doing everything in our power to accommodate your requests. But some things are simply beyond our control." The man, Mr. Hoffman, took a menacing step toward Sophia. "Listen here, you uppity little—" Before he could finish the sentence, Kevin found himself stepping into the room. "Excuse me," he said loudly, causing both Sophia and Mr. Hoffman to turn in surprise. "I couldn't help but overhear. Is there a problem here?" Sophia's eyes widened in surprise at Kevin's sudden appearance, but she quickly regained her composure. Mr. Hoffman, on the other hand, looked positively apoplectic. "This is a private conversation," he snarled. "I suggest you mind your own business." Kevin held up his hands in a placating gesture. "I'm sorry, I don't mean to intrude." I just wanted to make sure everything was all right. It sounded like things were getting a bit heated. Sophia shot him a grateful look before turning back to Mr. Hoffman. Mr. Hoffman, perhaps we could continue this discussion later when we've both had a chance to cool down. I assure you, we will do everything in our power to make your stay as comfortable as possible. The man glared at them both for a long moment before storming out of the room, muttering under his breath. As soon as he was gone, Sophia's shoulders sagged and she let out a long breath. "Thank you," she said, turning to Kevin. "You didn't have to do that." Kevin shrugged, offering a small smile. "It seemed like the right thing to do. Are you okay?" Sophia nodded, straightening her jacket. "I'm fine. It's not the first difficult guest I've dealt with, and it certainly won't be the last. But I appreciate your concern, Kevin." There was a moment of silence between them, filled with an unspoken connection. Finally, Sophia spoke again, her voice softer than before. "You know, I think I could use a cup of coffee after all that, if the offer still stands." Kevin's heart leapt. "Absolutely. There's a great little cafe just down the street if you'd like to get away from the hotel for a bit." Sophia hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "That sounds perfect. Just let me grab my purse." As they walked to the cafe, Kevin found himself hyper-aware of Sophia's presence beside him. She moved with a grace that belied the stress she must be under, her head held high and a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. The cafe was a cozy spot, with mismatched furniture and the rich aroma of freshly ground coffee beans filling the air. They settled into a quiet corner, each cradling a steaming mug. "So," Kevin began, "how long have you been working at the Arcadia?" Sophia took a sip of her coffee before answering. "Almost 5 years now. It's been challenging but rewarding." "What about you? What brings you to Santa Barbara?" Kevin launched into his prepared backstory, weaving truth with fiction. "I'm an insurance adjuster from Omaha. This trip is a bit of a splurge for me. I've been saving up for years. Always dreamed of seeing the California coast." Sophia's eyes softened. "That's wonderful. I hope it's living up to your expectations." "It's exceeding them," Kevin replied, his gaze holding hers. "Especially the company." A faint blush colored Sophia's cheeks, and she quickly looked down at her coffee. "You're very kind, Kevin, but I'm sure you didn't come all this way to listen to me complain about difficult guests." "Actually, I'd love to hear more about your work," Kevin said earnestly. "It must be fascinating, orchestrating all those events and keeping everything running smoothly." Sophia looked up, surprise evident in her expression. "You really want to know?" Kevin nodded encouragingly, and just like that, the floodgates opened. Sophia began to talk about her job, the challenges, the triumphs, the little moments of magic that made it all worthwhile. As she spoke, Kevin found himself captivated not just by her words, but by the passion that shone through every gesture, every inflection of her voice. "I'm sorry," Sophia said suddenly, looking embarrassed. "I'm rambling. You must be bored to tears." "Not at all," Kevin assured her. "It's refreshing to meet someone who's so passionate about what they do. I admire that." Sophia tilted her head, studying him. "What about you, Kevin? Are you passionate about insurance?" The question caught him off guard. For a moment he struggled to maintain his persona, to remember the details of a life he had invented. But looking into Sophia's eyes, he found himself wanting to tell her the truth, or at least a version of it. "Honestly, not really," he admitted. "It pays the bills, but I've been feeling lately like something's missing. That's part of why I took this trip. I thought maybe if I stepped out of my routine, I might figure out what I really want from life." The vulnerability in his voice surprised even him. Sophia reached out, placing her hand on his for just a moment. "I understand that feeling," she said softly. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm so busy making other people's dreams come true that I've forgotten about my own." In that moment, something shifted between them. The polite distance of strangers gave way to a deeper connection, a recognition of kindred spirits. They talked for hours, long after their coffee had gone cold, sharing hopes, fears, and dreams they had scarcely admitted to themselves. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow through the cafe windows, Sophia glanced at her watch and gasped. "Oh no, I completely lost track of time. I have a meeting with the chef in 20 minutes to go over tomorrow's menu." They hurried back to the hotel, both reluctant for the evening to end. At the entrance, Sophia turned to Kevin, a soft smile on her face. "Thank you for this. I can't remember the last time I just talked like that. It was nice." "It was more than nice," Kevin replied, his heart racing. "Maybe we could do it again sometime." Sophia hesitated for just a moment before nodding. "I'd like that. Good night, Kevin." As she disappeared into the hotel, Kevin stood rooted to the spot, a goofy grin spreading across his face. He felt lighter than he had in years, buoyed by the connection he had forged with Sophia. But as the initial euphoria faded, a gnawing guilt began to take its place. How could he pursue this connection when it was built on a lie? Over the next few days, Kevin found himself seeking out Sophia at every opportunity. They shared quick conversations in the hallways, lingering glances across the lobby, and even managed to sneak away for another coffee date. With each interaction, Kevin felt himself falling deeper, even as the weight of his deception grew heavier. One evening, as he paced his room, torn between his growing feelings for Sophia and the knowledge that he was living a lie, there was a knock at the door. Confused, he opened it to find Jasper standing there, a concerned expression on his face. "We need to talk," Jasper said, stepping into the room and closing the door behind him. Kevin's heart sank. "What's wrong?" Jasper sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "The board is getting restless. They're questioning your extended absence, especially with the new property acquisition coming up. They're talking about calling an emergency meeting." Kevin cursed under his breath. He had been so caught up in his alter ego that he had almost forgotten about his real-life responsibilities. "How long do I have?" "A week, maybe 2 at most," Jasper replied. "Keanu, I know this experience has been important to you, but I can't leave yet," Kevin interrupted, his voice tinged with desperation. "I've met someone, Jasper. Someone special." Jasper's eyebrows shot up. "The event manager, Sophia?" Kevin nodded, sinking onto the bed. "She's incredible, Jasper. Smart, passionate, kind. When I'm with her, I feel real. Like I'm not just playing a part." "But you are playing a part," Jasper pointed out gently. "She doesn't know who you really are." The words hit Kevin like a physical blow. He knew Jasper was right, but the thought of losing Sophia, of returning to his old life without her, was almost unbearable. "I need to tell her the truth," he said, finally. "She deserves to know." Jasper looked skeptical. "Are you sure that's wise? It could backfire spectacularly." Kevin stood up, his resolve strengthening. "I have to try. I can't keep lying to her. And maybe if she knows the real me, we can find a way to make this work." Jasper sighed, recognizing the determination in his friend's eyes. "All right. But be careful, Keanu. You're not just risking your heart here. This could have serious repercussions for the hotel, for your career." Kevin nodded, the weight of his decision settling on his shoulders. "I know, but some things are worth the risk." After Jasper left, Kevin spent a sleepless night planning how to reveal his true identity to Sophia. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he clung to the hope that the connection they had forged was strong enough to withstand the truth. The next morning, he sought out Sophia, his heart pounding. He found her in the hotel's grand ballroom, overseeing the setup for a charity gala that evening. "Sophia," he called out, his voice cracking slightly. "Can we talk? It's important." She turned, a smile lighting up her face at the sight of him. But as she took in his serious expression, her own face fell. "Kevin, what's wrong?" He took a deep breath. "Not here. Can we go somewhere private?" Sophia nodded, concern evident in her eyes. She led him to a small office off the main ballroom, closing the door behind them. "What is it, Kevin? You're scaring me." Kevin opened his mouth, ready to confess everything, when suddenly the door burst open. A frantic-looking staff member rushed in. "Ms. Alvarez, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but we have an emergency. The band for tonight's gala just called. Their van broke down on the highway, and they're not sure they'll make it in time." Sophia's eyes widened in alarm. "What? No, this can't be happening. The gala is in 6 hours." As she rushed out of the office, barking orders into her headset, Kevin was left standing alone, his confession dying on his lips. He realized with a sinking feeling that his chance to come clean had slipped away. Throughout the day, Kevin watched from the sidelines as Sophia worked tirelessly to salvage the gala. She was a whirlwind of activity, making calls, rearranging schedules, and somehow managing to book a last-minute replacement band. As evening fell and guests began to arrive, Kevin found himself in awe of Sophia's grace under pressure. She moved through the ballroom like a conductor, ensuring every detail was perfect. The gala was a resounding success, and as the last guests departed in the early hours of the morning, Kevin saw Sophia finally allow herself to relax. He approached her as she stood alone on the balcony, gazing out at the starlit ocean. "You were amazing tonight," he said softly. Sophia turned, a tired but genuine smile on her face. "Kevin, I'm so sorry about earlier. You wanted to talk about something important?" Kevin hesitated, torn between his desire to be honest and his fear of ruining this perfect moment. "It can wait," he said finally. "Right now, I just want to enjoy this moment with you." Sophia's smile widened, and she leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. As they stood there, basking in the quiet triumph of the evening, Kevin felt a mix of emotions wash over him: love, guilt, hope, and fear. He knew that soon he would have to face the truth, but for now, he allowed himself to savor this moment of connection, praying that when the time came to reveal his true self, Sophia would find it in her heart to forgive him. The following days passed in a blur of stolen moments and mounting tension. Kevin found himself caught between two worlds: the simple, honest connection he shared with Sophia and the looming reality of his true identity. Every smile, every touch, every shared secret felt both precious and painful, knowing that it could all come crashing down at any moment. One afternoon, as they strolled along the beach, hand in hand, Sophia turned to him with a vulnerability he had never seen before. "Kevin," she said softly, "I need to tell you something." His heart raced, wondering if somehow she had discovered his secret. "What is it?" Sophia took a deep breath, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "I've never felt this way about anyone before, and it scares me. My last relationship, it didn't end well. I've kept people at arm's length ever since, focusing on my career, on making other people's dreams come true. But with you, I feel like maybe I can dream again too." Kevin felt a lump form in his throat, overwhelmed by her confession and racked with guilt over his own deception. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair to hide the tears that threatened to fall. "Sophia, But before he could continue, a commotion further down the beach caught their attention. A group of children were pointing and shouting at something in the water. Without hesitation, Kevin ran towards them, Sophia close behind. As they approached, they saw the cause of the excitement. A young boy, no more than 10 years old, was struggling against a strong current, being pulled further out to sea. His panicked cries carried over the sound of the waves. Kevin didn't think twice. He kicked off his shoes and plunged into the water, powerful strokes carrying him swiftly towards the struggling child. Years of training for action movies had honed his swimming skills, but the current was stronger than he had anticipated. It took all of his strength to reach the boy and wrap an arm around him. "It's okay, I've got you," he gasped, trying to keep the boy's head above water as he fought against the pull of the ocean. "Just hold on to me." As he battled the waves, trying to make his way back to shore, Kevin could hear Sophia's voice, distant but clear, calling for help. His muscles burned with exertion, and for a terrifying moment, he feared they might both be dragged under. But then, miraculously, he felt the sand beneath his feet. With a final burst of energy, he half swam, half staggered towards the beach. The boy clutched tightly to his chest. As they reached the shallows, hands reached out to help them, pulling them to safety. Kevin collapsed onto the sand, coughing and gasping for air. Through blurred vision, he saw paramedics arriving, tending to the boy. And then Sophia was there, her face a mask of concern and relief. "Kevin, oh my God, are you all right?" she cried, cradling his face in her hands. He nodded weakly, still trying to catch his breath. "The boy, is he okay?" "He's fine, thanks to you," Sophia assured him. "That was the bravest thing I've ever seen." As the adrenaline began to fade, Kevin suddenly realized the precariousness of his situation. His carefully constructed disguise had been compromised. The prosthetic nose was gone, washed away by the sea, and his wig hung in wet clumps around his face. He looked up at Sophia, seeing the moment recognition dawned in her eyes. Her hands fell away from his face, and she took a step back, confusion and hurt warring in her expression. "Kevin, what? I don't understand," she stammered. Before he could respond, a chorus of excited voices rose around them. "Is that Keanu Reeves? Oh my God, it is! He saved that boy!" In a matter of moments, they were surrounded by a crowd of onlookers, phones out, all clamoring for a glimpse of the Hollywood star in their midst. Kevin, now unmistakably Keanu, struggled to his feet, his eyes never leaving Sophia's face. "Sophia, please let me explain," he pleaded. But Sophia was already backing away, her face a mask of betrayal. Without a word, she turned and ran, leaving Keanu standing alone amidst the growing chaos. The next few hours passed in a blur. Paramedics insisted on checking him over, police wanted statements, and the press had somehow gotten wind of the incident. Through it all, Keanu's thoughts were consumed by Sophia. Her shocked expression, the hurt in her eyes, the way she had fled without giving him a chance to explain. It was late into the night when he finally managed to escape back to his suite, at the Arcadia. Jasper was waiting for him, his face grave. "The secret's out," Jasper said unnecessarily. "It's all over the news. Hollywood star Keanu Reeves saves child in daring ocean rescue. The hotel's phone lines are jammed with reporters wanting a statement." Keanu sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. "I don't care about any of that. I need to talk to Sophia. Have you seen her?" Jasper shook his head. "She's not answering her phone. The staff said she came back to the hotel, packed a bag and left. No one knows where she went." The words hit Keanu like a physical blow. He had known the truth would hurt Sophia, but he hadn't anticipated this complete withdrawal. The thought of never seeing her again, never having the chance to explain, was unbearable. "What have I done, Jasper?" he whispered. Jasper sat beside him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You fell in love, Keanu. It's messy and complicated, but it's also the most real thing you've experienced in years. Don't give up on it yet." Over the next few days, Keanu tried everything he could think of to reach Sophia. He left countless voicemails, sent emails, even tried to get messages to her through the hotel staff, but there was no response. Meanwhile, the media frenzy surrounding his heroic act and the revelation of his undercover stay at the Arcadia only grew. Paparazzi camped outside the hotel, guests clamored for autographs, and his phone rang incessantly with calls from his agent, publicist, and various studios wanting to capitalize on the publicity. But Keanu couldn't bring himself to care about any of it. He moved through the days in a fog, his thoughts consumed by Sophia and the connection they had shared. He replayed their conversations in his mind, searching for clues, for some way to make things right. It was nearly a week later when Jasper burst into his suite, an excited gleam in his eye. "I found her," he announced. "Sophia. She's staying with her sister in Ojai." Keanu was on his feet in an instant. "Give me the address. I need to go to her." Jasper hesitated. "Are you sure that's wise? Maybe you should give her more time." But Keanu was already shaking his head. "No more time. No more hiding. I need to face this head on. I owe her the truth, even if she never wants to see me again afterward." The drive to Ojai felt interminable. Keanu rehearsed what he would say over and over, knowing that no words could truly convey the depth of his feelings or the sincerity of his regret. As he pulled up in front of the modest house Jasper had directed him to, his heart was pounding, so hard he could barely breathe. He approached the door on shaky legs, raised his hand to knock, and froze. What if she slammed the door in his face? What if she refused to listen? What if this was the end of something that had barely begun? But then he remembered the feeling of Sophia in his arms, the way her eyes lit up when she laughed, the connection that had sparked between them from that very first meeting. It was worth fighting for. Taking a deep breath, Keanu knocked. Moments later, the door opened, and there she was. Sophia looked tired, her eyes red-rimmed as if she had been crying. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, the air between them charged with unspoken emotions. Finally, Sophia broke the silence. "What are you doing here, Keanu?" The use of his real name felt like a knife to his heart. "I needed to see you," he said softly. "To explain, to apologize. Sophia, She held up a hand, cutting him off. "Not here, not with my sister and her kids inside. There's a park down the street, we can talk there." Keanu nodded, relief flooding through him at this small concession. As they walked to the park in tense silence, he struggled to organize his thoughts, to find the right words to convey everything he was feeling. When they reached a secluded bench, Sophia turned to face him, her arms crossed protectively over her chest. "All right, talk." Keanu took a deep breath. "First, I want you to know how sorry I am. I never meant to hurt you, Sophia. That was the last thing I ever wanted." "Then why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why the lie? Was any of it real?" "It was all real," Keanu insisted, taking a step towards her. "Every moment, every conversation, every feeling. It was all real. The only lie was my name and my background. Everything else, who I am, how I feel about you, that was all true." Sophia's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "But why? I don't understand. You're Keanu Reeves, for God's sake. Why would you pretend to be someone else?" Keanu sank onto the bench, running a hand through his hair. "Because I needed to remember what it felt like to be normal, to connect with people without the weight of expectations, without the barrier that fame creates. I've been play acting for so long, Sophia, in movies, in public appearances, even in my personal life to some extent. I came to the Arcadia looking for something authentic, something real, and I found it, with you." Sophia sat beside him, her anger seemingly deflated by his words. "But why didn't you tell me sooner? We spent so much time together. Didn't you trust me?" "I wanted to tell you," Keanu said, turning to face her. "So many times. But I was afraid that if you knew who I really was, everything would change, that you'd see me differently, that the connection we had would be lost. And then, as time went on, I was afraid of losing you altogether. I know it was selfish, and I'm so sorry." Silence fell between them, heavy with the weight of his confession. Sophia stared out at the park, her expression unreadable. Keanu waited, his heart in his throat, for her response. Finally, she spoke. "I fell in love with Kevin Miller," she said softly. "A kind, thoughtful man who listened to me, who made me laugh, who saw me for who I really am. Was that man real, or was he just another character you were playing?" Keanu reached out, gently taking her hand in his. To his immense relief, she didn't pull away. "Kevin Miller is a part of me," he said, earnestly. "He's the man I am when all the trappings of fame are stripped away. He's the man I want to be, Sophia. And loving you, that's the most real thing I've ever experienced." Sophia turned to look at him, searching his face as if seeing him for the first time. "I don't know if I can trust you," she said, her voice trembling. "How do I know this isn't just another act? Give me a chance to prove it to you," Keanu pleaded. "No more lies, no more hiding. Just you and me, getting to know each other for real this time. I know I've hurt you, and I'll spend every day making it up to you if you'll let me. Because I love you, Sophia. The real me loves the real you." Tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks, and Keanu longed to wipe them away. But he held back, knowing that the next move had to be hers. For what felt like an eternity, Sophia was silent, her inner struggle playing out across her face. Then slowly she squeezed his hand. "I can't promise anything," she said softly, "but I'm willing to try, to see if what we had, what we could have, is real." Relief and joy surged through Keanu. He brought her hand to his lips, pressing, a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "That's all I ask," he murmured, "a chance to show you the real me, flaws, fame and all, and a chance to love you the way you deserve to be loved." As they sat there in the quiet park, the first tentative steps towards reconciliation stretching out before them, Keanu felt a sense of peace settle over him. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, There would be paparazzi to dodge, public scrutiny, to weather and trust to rebuild. But for the first time in years, he felt truly authentically himself. And with Sophia by his side, willing to take this leap of faith with him, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Not as Keanu Reeves, the movie star, and Sofia Alvarez, the event planner, but as two people who had found something real in a world of illusions, a love worth fighting for. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, Keanu and Sophia stood, hand in hand, ready to embark on the next chapter of their story. Whatever the future held, they would face it together, with honesty, courage, and love.